So many women around the world are just obsessed with this new AMH test that you can get. And so the thinking goes, if your AMH is low, that means you have less eggs, which means you have low fertility, and hence IVF comes into the picture. I know many women, whether they're in their 30s or their 40s, and they were diagnosed with low AMH, and they were able to raise their AMH levels naturally and get pregnant naturally. And that's exactly what we help women do at Ferta. There's so much more to fertility than just AMH. And I think you'll be pretty shocked to hear some of the truth behind AMH. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode on the Ferta YouTube channel. So today I really want to get into AMH because so many women around the world are just obsessed with this new AMH test that you can get, and people are thinking that AMH can basically predict your fertility and determine your future fertility potential. So today I want to talk about what exactly AMH is and what it isn't, and when it's useful and when it's not useful, and how we at Ferta use AMH. And I think you'll be pretty shocked to hear some of the truth behind AMH. So let's get right into it. First of all, what is AMH, right? So AMH stands for Anti-Müllerian Hormone. And this is a hormone that immature follicles in a woman's ovaries produce. So if you understand how a woman's reproductive system works, what happens is that typically a woman is born with all her eggs, or at least that's the conventional thinking. There are some people that even challenge that notion, but there's not enough evidence to show that women grow more eggs over the lifetime. So we'll just go with the assumption that women are born with all the eggs they have. So when you're a fetus, just 20 weeks old in your mother's womb, you have about 6 to 7 million eggs. And then by the time you're born, that drops down to about 1 million eggs. And then by the time you reach puberty, there's about 300,000 eggs left. Of those 300,000, only about 300 to 500 will ever become mature eggs and be released. And so every month when a woman has a menstrual cycle, in the follicular phase, there are several follicles that will be developed in the ovaries. These follicles will contain immature eggs. One of these follicles will become a dominant egg, and that egg will get released, and that's the egg that gets released during ovulation and leads to a potential pregnancy if that's your choice, or you end up getting a period if you don't end up getting pregnant. So with anti-Müllerian hormone, what it's measuring is the number of essentially immature follicles that exist in a woman's ovaries. And the thinking goes that the higher this number, the more potential eggs you have left. So conventional medicine looks at AMH as a way to measure how many eggs you have. And so the thinking goes that if you measure your AMH, if your AMH is low, that means you have less eggs, which means you have low fertility, and so we need to intervene as soon as possible, and hence IVF comes into the picture. And I just want to say that that's a very simplistic way of looking at a woman's fertility, because a woman's fertility is much more than just AMH, and I'll explain why. So the reason AMH is so popular in the modern medical space is a few things. One is AMH, like I said, gives us a good measure of the quantity of eggs left. And the other thing is that AMH is cycle independent, meaning that regardless of when you measure AMH in your cycle, it will be consistent. With other hormones like estrogen or progesterone or FH or LH, these are all hormones that fluctuate a lot during a woman's cycle. So getting just one-time snapshot of any of these hormones don't really tell us much. With AMH, you can get a snapshot any time of the month and kind of get a sense of, like, quote unquote, how many eggs are left. The other reason that AMH could be useful is because with certain conditions like PCOS, for example, if you have a very high AMH, it's a good indicator or a potential indicator that you may have PCOS. And if you have very, very low AMH, it could be a potential indicator that you have low ovarian reserve. But AMH doesn't tell us anything about the quality of the eggs. So it doesn't actually tell us how good your eggs are. It doesn't tell us your ability to get pregnant naturally. It doesn't tell us how healthy that pregnancy and baby can be. It doesn't tell us any of that. So it's very limited in what information it gives us. And so if you went to a fertility clinic and they tested your AMH and it came out low and you're freaking out, I just want you to pause and realize that there could be nothing wrong and you could be freaking out for no reason. There could be many reasons why your AMH is low. And in fact, there's been studies to show that there's actually not a good correlation between AMH and successful pregnancy rates. So let me read those studies. So there was one study called the Hope-Giving Time to Conceive study, and researchers followed 750 women between the ages of 30 and 44. And what they discovered is that women with diminished ovarian reserve, so this means AMH that is less than 0.7 ng per ml, were just as likely to conceive as those with normal AMH levels for their age. So AMH levels are typically known to decline with age. And so even the women with low AMH, less than 0.7, were able to conceive naturally. And in fact, women with low AMH had an 84% probability of conception after 12 months, compared to 75% of women with normal AMH. So if anything, the low AMH group actually did better than the normal AMH group. So there's basically, in this study, no correlation between AMH and your ability to get pregnant. Then there's another more recent research, like very recent in 2024, with 3,150 women. And they found a very modest difference between conception rates of women with low AMH and a little bit higher AMH. So the monthly chance of conception was 11.2 for those with low AMH and 14.3 for those with normal AMH. And so there is a slight difference, but it's very modest and it's nothing as dramatic as a doctor may make it seem like, where you have low AMH and you're just like doomed for life, right? There was another amazing meta-analysis done, which did an analysis of 11 studies with 4,388 women, and they concluded bluntly that serum AMH levels have poor predictive value for natural pregnancy, whether you're younger or you're older. So the bottom line is that the studies are showing us that AMH is actually not a good measure of whether you can get pregnant naturally and whether you'll have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby. At Ferta, and in general in functional medicine, we take a look at a much broader picture to understand a woman's fertility. And so AMH just plays like a small, tiny role in that measure. We look at so much more beyond AMH. For example, at Ferta, we like to look at what your metabolic health is doing. How is your blood sugar regulation? How are your thyroid hormones functioning? We also like to look at stress. Do you have a lot of oxidative stress? Do you have good nutrient status? Are you digesting the foods that you're eating? Is your body getting enough nutrients it needs? How are your energy levels? How's your libido? How's your menstrual cycle going? Are you getting healthy cycles each month that are regular, or are they all over the place and painful? We look at so much more than just AMH because it gives us a much, much better picture of what's going on inside your body and how fertile you truly are. And even if we do run AMH labs, which we don't, by the way, we don't run AMH labs by default because we don't need it. We look at so much more beyond AMH to figure out someone's fertility status. But let's say we do run AMH and it is low and someone's very concerned about it, then we're not going to say, okay, you have low fertility, you need to go get IVF, or, you need to take these extreme measures to get pregnant. Because, like I said, we just don't believe that's true. Instead, we'll really dig deep to figure out what is causing that low AMH. Is it that you're living a very stressed out lifestyle and that stress is causing stress on every cell in your body, and so your eggs are not functioning as properly as they should? Is it because you are not eating enough nutrient-dense foods, and so your metabolic health and your mitochondrial health and your blood sugar regulation and everything is just not functioning properly, and so your egg health is also compromised? Are there perhaps any genetic markers or autoimmune issues that could be causing your AMH to be low? So we try to figure out what is causing that low AMH so we can help you resolve those and in turn potentially even increase your AMH and definitely increase your chances of getting pregnant naturally. I know many women who, whether they're in their 30s or their 40s, they were diagnosed with low AMH and they were able to raise their AMH levels naturally and get pregnant naturally. So all this to say is that if you've been told that you have low AMH and you're freaking out, please don't do that, because that's just causing extra stress on your body that you don't need to put on yourself. Instead, just realize that there's so much more to fertility than just AMH. Even if you have good AMH levels that are like optimal and perfect, that's not a guarantee that you can get pregnant naturally and that you can have a successful and healthy baby. Because like I said, AMH is a very, very small part of fertility overall. So now let's say you did get your AMH levels checked and they were low, and you are worried and you want to try to improve them because you want to conceive. You definitely can do that. And the way that women's eggs work is that you have a 90-day cycle. So your eggs take about 90 days to mature. So within 90 days, if you improve your health, your eggs will also improve over the course of 90 days. So the quality of the eggs that I release each month is determined by my health 90 days ago, because that egg started maturing 90 days ago. So you definitely have control over how you can improve the quality of your eggs and improve the chances of you getting pregnant. And that's exactly what we help women do at Ferta. And like I said, we look at all different things that are going on inside the body and outside the body to figure out how we can optimize women's egg health so they can get pregnant and have a successful baby. And so all in all, I just want to close this episode by saying that AMH is not a death sentence. You definitely have control over your fertility. Even if you have low AMH, you can get pregnant naturally. And more importantly, if you have normal AMH, don't just take that as a face value that you can get pregnant, because that doesn't tell us much about your quality of eggs. What we really want to know is what are the quality of your eggs, because if you have good quality eggs, even if you have less eggs, but you have really good quality eggs, you can get pregnant naturally. So I'll close this episode by saying that, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.